Eskom's power plants are operating at full capacity. Amid a renewed slew of blackouts, the power utility held a briefing on its operational performance today. But CEO Andre de Ruyter says South Africans should not accept rolling blackouts as the new normal. He says increasing generation capacity is a priority for the power utility. Govan Whittles was following that briefing for us. He's back in studio now for more on that. So what is the energy availability right now in South Africa?
The short answer, Shahan, is that it's at 62%. So 62% of Eskom's generation capacity is currently feeding energy into the grid, but that's just not good enough. And the more worrying attachment to that answer is that Eskom has recorded the most number of trips at its power stations on record. In fact, it recorded about 300 more than it thought was going to happen in the same period. So they're in trouble, not only when it comes to generating power at their power stations, but when it comes to repairing faults and bringing trip generators back online, they're taking longer than they used to, but they are conducting maintenance at a pace at which the Eskom executive says it's acceptable for this moment. The elephant in the room is the shortfall of 4 to 6 gigawatts of energy. That's 4 to 6,000 megawatts of power. So Eskom needs those megawatts so that they can take other units out on maintenance, and without them, every time a unit needs to be taken on maintenance, it means load shedding will need to be implemented. Right now they're looking for those 4 to 6,000 megawatts, but let's listen to what they had to say about energy availability.
It's important to emphasize that we should not accept load shedding and the lack of generation capacity as the new normal. While it's been going on for 14 years now, we need to take urgent steps to address load shedding. From an Eskom perspective, we have therefore welcomed the initiative by the DMRE to issue bid window 5 and 6. We're working very closely with the DMRE as well as with the IPP office to accelerate and expedite the implementation of these projects. It is in our interest as an electricity utility to make sure that we can bring online as quickly as possible this additional capacity. We've previously said that there is a shortfall in generation capacity of between 4 and 6 gigawatts of capacity that we need as soon as possible. And we need this capacity in order to give us the headroom to take units out on planned maintenance and carry out that planned maintenance and return the units to service as planned. And that is why the addition of new capacity remains an urgent priority.
So that's the priority, to actually get us out of the mess. Hopefully it happens. Is there any improvement in the energy availability at all, though?
That's the thing, they're not making more energy available, and they've done a comparison between the period ending the financial year this year and last year, and they found that they actually implemented more days of load shedding this year compared to the same period last year. So they've done worse in real terms, and it's 6 days extra that they've implemented. Let's listen to Jan Oberholzer. He's the Chief Operations Officer for Eskom, and he'll explain exactly how they got into that situation.
Unfortunately, if you compare the days of load shedding from the 1st of January to where we find ourselves as the end of April, and as we speak where we stand today, last year we had 26 days between the 1st of January and May, but where we find ourselves now, including yesterday, 32 days of load shedding up until yesterday. So we had 6 days more than virtually the same period last year.
That's a very worrying situation, but if they manage to get the generation capacity, I'm guessing, to fill that gap, we won't have as many in the next period next year, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the problem really is that the generation capacity isn't immediately available. These IPPs still haven't started feeding power into the grid, even though the first bid window was years ago. So there's a delay in the bid windows being open for IPPs, the IPPs getting all this stuff in order, generating the power and then feeding that into the grid. That's the urgent problem that Andre de Ruyter says needs to be addressed.
Andre de Ruyter is also going to be handling this issue of the rot that runs deep in Eskom when it comes to the findings of the Zondo Commission. How's that going to work?
Yeah, so he's acknowledged that there still are criminal syndicates operating on Eskom premises. When we went to the Tutuka power station near Standerton, we heard from the power station manager describing how some of those syndicates would make sure the ash machines break, then they would get a tender to collect the ash via the truck, and that would perpetuate corruption. Andre de Ruyter today explaining that he's met with the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batoy, and he met with her just after the Zondo report on Eskom was released. Andre de Ruyter now chairing an internal task team within Eskom that has external legal advisors that will make available witnesses to the NPA as well as evidence and other documents as required so that prosecutions can follow from the Zondo report.
It's going to be interesting to see how they handle that one. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Govan Whittles.